wherever you are and whatever you're doing. Welcome to another session where myself and Jason go through all the soft and system side to sales. And today, Jason, we have a big topic. We're talking about what do sales leaders need to do in this
Yeah.
ever changing world. So, welcome, Jason, and welcome everybody. I hope everybody's having a great Friday wherever you are. And
Mhm.
today, Jason, we really do have a big topic because we're talking about developing leaders, right? And
Yeah.
specifically sales leaders. We know all what's happened in the last 3 to 4 years, right? And
Mhm.
this is something that I say a lot. And I've been saying this since before the last 3 or 4 years that change is the only constant. I'm a change agent.
Yeah.
You're a change agent. We deliver change programs into companies all the time. And a big part of becoming good at change is becoming like um understanding of it, welcoming it, and then embedding and embracing it, not just as a team, as an individual level, right? So it's very important that you embrace it because the only constant in business today is change, Jason. And as in sales, sales are at the epicenter of everything
Yeah.
business
Yeah.
and business development, business growth, and sometimes business hang on and business stabilization in very difficult times. So, Jason, tell me what you're seeing in the marketplace at the moment when it comes to what sales leaders need to have to really lead the next generations.
Wow, that's a massive question
Isn't it?
there. And I think we're probably going to go over the 20 minutes on this and maybe do a part two and possibly a part three. Um, I'm actually in the midst of running a fourth or fifth cohort globally on this particular area. And the challenge at the moment is for the future, people are coming in and there's a lot of pressure onto you as a manager. So there's a lot of essential skills that you need to have. Some parts of it, you almost like you need to be a therapist. And what
Mm,
I mean by being a therapist, it's because you're dealing with a new team and you're new as well, people come with their concerns to you all the time. So, like, I don't say go out and be a therapist. I say that in light, but what I mean, you really have to understand other people. You really have to listen to their concerns because the first part of it is really understanding other people. And I think we spoke about people's drivers, but you know, people have challenging situations behind their lives. They have challenging situations behind a call or presentation they're going to be delivering to a client. They also have that emotion of when they are
mm,
delivering it, and they have the challenges to delivering to a newer client or an existing client, and what the benefits is to the client. So you really need to be that person that is multifunctional now, more so than ever before, because you have to be there empathetically. You really have to understand your team, but you also have to understand your team and who they are. What
mm,
I mean by who they are, you know, their family lives, their background, their speak to them as a person, build that rapport, build that connection with them.
mm.
So that's one area that you have to learn how to
Yeah.
do that, and that just comes with experience, I think. But you can get some of that into learned behavior and just to practice key things, but there's still a lot more you can do.
Yeah. And Jason, it's funny you say the word therapist. I say the word counselor, right?
Yeah,
It's funny
same
you say
thing.
that because I say to be a leader into this in today's world, right? you need to be three things, right? You need to be the leader, number one, right?
Yeah.
And then that means leading your team, getting the best out of your team, making them align, make them all congruent and complement everything, right? That's the base level. But there's two other things, Jason, that I always talk about to be the counselor. You have to be their counselor. You have to, as you said, you have to understand what's going on in their family lives. You need to help them when they're in trouble. You need to give before you take. You need to
Mm.
become their friend, nearly, Jason, right? So I believe that's really, really important to be that counselor. But you've also got to be their teacher. You can't just expect people to come in and get up and running. Like
Mm.
it's all about building the trust with them, building an understanding, as you said, of what their capability is and what their potential is. What are their gaps today, and how are you going to bring them on a journey to achieve what they need to achieve? And it's not about just putting them out there in a corner and say, okay, you were hired to do this, just go do it. And I
Yeah.
had a situation, Jason, where I was working with a team a number of years ago, and they just headhunted this person, this sales guy that was doing really well in a similar industry, a little bit different, and he was killing it. And they came in, and after 6 months, they hadn't that person hadn't achieved what they thought, and they were thinking of not. He was still on probation. They were thinking of not keeping him on after, because they were saying they were very disappointed. So I asked them
Mm.
a question. So tell me, how did you induct them into the business? And they said, sorry, they didn't need induction because they're so good. I said, no, no, no. Like, you just brought them in. Did you train them your way of doing sales for your industry? No. They can do sales. So no, 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 no. Your business should have a sales process. You need to teach people. And I said that and it's a quote I always say at the moment: train them before you blame them.
Yeah.
Before you send them out into the big bad world, make sure they're equipped to go out to the big bad world. Make sure they understand what your clients need. Make sure they understand who your clients, what they want, what kind of messaging do they want here. All those subtleties, Jason, that you talk about all
Yeah.
the time. This is how you bring people. And then after 6 months, if they can't do that, then you can have a conversation if it's lacking performance. But if you don't teach them what performance is,
Yeah.
how can you fire them? So
Yeah.
again, you go back to your point. It's all about building, learning, and helping people to be really good at what they do.
Yeah. And like we touched on the word performance, and it is about hopefully it's high potential performance with them. But we spoke about connecting with them, finding out their concerns, finding out what they want. Meaning, like we've taught them, we're teaching them all the models, we're teaching them about the accounts and how you structure your accounts. We teach them how to do the soft skills, but then it's down to them to self learn and self go out and learn. But if you're in an organization where there is areas that they can actually say, I do want growth, I do see potential. Obviously, I have to perform at the highest level possible. But what other areas can I learn and grow within the organization? What other things are there out there that I need to go out there? Maybe after a year, maybe after 2 years. Obviously, don't run before I can walk. But you want to invest into your team so they feel like they're being motivated towards some sort of goal. Maybe they want to be a manager at some stage. Maybe they want to be in marketing at some stage. Maybe they want something else as well as being into sales. But I think that's a driver to help them to go forward as well. Is once you do the soft skills, once you understand who they are, once you get them to develop as a proper sales professional in all
Mm.
areas of that, is what else do they want to do? What other things to drive them forwards? I know it's about revenue. I know it's about making money, and we all know it's about that, and
Mm.
a lot of other things. But how can we develop them further? I think there's another core thing that we need for our people.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that, Jason, because I think that's a very powerful call out there, because sales, from my experience, Jason, are not so good on the process side of things, right? And a sales leader, for me, right, needs to, first of all, number one, know these things themselves. And what I'm talking about is understand not only targets, but then the process and performance requirements they need to do to achieve those
Mhm.
targets, right? So they need to understand process. So I believe a big part of a leader in the new sales world for the future generations has to be really good on process. Not just process is usually like kept for the sort of operational side of things, Jason, but I really believe you need to really get the best out of everything between your process, your salespeople, your performance, your conversions, and then your after sales experience, right? So I believe that the first part of that, Jason, is process, knowing what's working, understanding feedback mechanisms,
Yeah.
making sure you continually improve data. And Jason, you spend more time in sales than me. So like I'm looking to hear your thoughts in a second on this, but I've never experienced teams and sales teams that are really good at knowing what works and what doesn't work. They have really good people that know how to close, right? Or they have people that know how to do lead generation, but they don't understand that full standard process that needs to be created. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But it does tend depend on the organization, like the high potential growth startups that are just accelerated out of nowhere. Those are the clients, because I've worked in and for and consulted in a lot of these high potential startups, which are funded by whoever, VCs or whatever, and they got all of a sudden they got 50 people, and no one has a process. And and I see you smile there because it obviously resonates with you. And
Mm.
you go, well, you need to understand the foundations now. You need to build this out to know exactly who you're targeting, um, have the personas that you want to target, know them, understand who they are. Obviously, have that process all the way through, but then you have to have the soft skills and understand how to reach out to the potential clients as well. So, you as a
Mm.
leader, probably at that stage, you need to be trained rather than being that entrepreneur head and all that. You just need people in that place to actually maybe that understand that. But it is how we can develop the leaders of the future, but also understanding a thing. And I was speaking about this earlier on. Is you got your EQ, you got your IQ, but then you got your TQ. So TQ is your technology. Do you understand the technology that you actually have so you can use and utilize it to its best effect? So once you have the technology around you, how do you use it? How do you use
Mm.
social reach? How do you can reach out to potential clients? How can you utilize your CRM to maximum effect? How do
Yeah.
you granularly get that so you get data coming in which is rich, but how do you analyze that data then? What do you need to do to analyze that? How do you reach forward? So um,
Yeah.
again, those leaders out there of the sales leaders, but then they have to educate the salespeople to do that as well.
Yeah. And Jason, that's another big call out, right? So in today's world and tomorrow's world, sales isn't just about knocking on doors anymore. Sales is about analyzing data. So
Yeah.
if you have to analyze data, you need analysis skills in your team. So big call out for me with a sales leader needs to know what are the key different skill sets I need to produce a high performing team, right? And a
Mm.
big part of that is obviously doing the do, Jason, going out there
Yeah.
and knocking on the doors, right? But then it's all about what? Analyzing what is working. You need those skill sets in your team to analyze and then use that analysis, develop improved process, improved messaging, or improved whatever it is so you can do better, continually improve. So, again, that's another key call out: data analytics, continuous improvement, process. There are three new massive skills that sales leaders themselves need to know. And as you rightly pointed out, need to bring their teams on that journey too.
Yeah, there's lots more that we can probably add in here because in a stressful environment and you're learning how to be a leader, confidence and being confident in front of your team is obviously impactful, but also be a little bit vulnerable as well. Because if you're developing leaders of the future, you don't know everything. And if you're there and you're expected to know everything, I think that there's a bit of honesty there, but also that connection with your team is just to say, look, it's something that I'm developing myself because as a leader, you still need to be developing yourself all the time. You probably don't know everything in the world, but obviously it's your job to know as much as you can to help and empower other people to get what they want.
Yeah.
So that brings me to the point, and I think I know we're going to blow up here because there's too much here.
Mm.
I think there's a massive degree of emotional intelligence that you need. Really understanding yourself, really understanding where you are at, really understanding your drivers. But
Mm.
it goes so much deeper than that when we can actually start that rolling
Yeah,
forward.
Jason, it really goes deep, not just for yourself, but then you understanding that with each of your team, right? And really, you said we talked about therapist and counselor earlier on. You need to know your teams intimately, right? You need to know what they're good at. You need to know
Yeah.
what their strengths are. You also need to know, from a sales perspective, what elements of the sales process they don't like and
Yeah.
they're not so good at. That could be a weak point, but an opportunity for someone else to
Mm,
come in. Because when you're looking at making the best process, Jason, right? You can't put as you know, you can't put a square box into a round hole, right? You have to make sure the people match the process, the skill set match the process, or different steps in the process. So finding out where your people fit on that sales funnel, that sales journey, because they're different skill sets. If you're
mm,
talking about B2B, like lead generation is very different than writing proposals that are really interesting for customers to read. Different skill sets. And
yeah.
some people, not very often you get people in both. So how do you maximize the people within it and play the people's strengths? In order to play to their strengths, you need to know what they are.
Yeah, yeah, and also develop their weaknesses, because reporting and data is can get confusing like hell. How do you
What
report
is?
back to a client? And maybe you as a leader, what other skills you need to report the data? How can you look at all of the elements, especially on the tech companies out there? I know there's a bit of a challenge out there in the market at the moment, but there's still data analytics there from the CRM. There's also, depending on the products and service that you do offer, is analyzing what has worked, but what needs to be improved. And learning that data from the CRM and everything else that does come in is how we can best impact the team, but the most important thing is how can we best impact the customers, because they're obviously the ones that are paying for the product and service that you do have, and how can we improve that from our team members' experience of learning so they can present something back to them in a narrative that works for them.
Yeah, and that's it, Jason. And that again goes deeper again because I always like to do a full analysis on how salespeople use CRMs because you talked about using it to their max capability and efficiency, right?
Yeah,
But that's all about knowing what parts of the CRM to use and what parts
yeah,
not to.
yeah,
What
yeah,
part is just pure time wasting? Because you know, CRM should be 80% client facing, not 80% desktop facing or
yeah,
screen facing. And that's what it's turned into. And I've had to take companies off CRM systems and then create a very simple, rough model in Excel just to figure out, well, what are the things that are useful for you? What features are useful for you to ensure you can move customers along a journey? And then once we've built a working model, then we built that set of requirements. These are the requirements that we want. You go to the CRM, then is it providing that? More than
yeah,
likely it does, Jason, because they can do everything. They can move your kitchen sink these days.
yeah,
But if it doesn't, then you have to go find a CRM that suits your specific needs. It's not a one size fits all, Jason. And they, as you said, they're so complicated. They can
yeah,
do
yeah.
anything you want, but you don't need that. You need to be specific and find out the 20% of that system that will give you 80% of your results.
Yeah, the Pareto principle works in
Mm.
lots of different areas. So it can be a bit of a challenge, and like I've been down that rabbit hole before with I don't need to use that, and you're stuck in the CRM. And I've coached teams where they're so stuck on the desktop and they're not speaking to their clients, and go, what are you afraid of? or they're stuck behind their email systems or whatever other systems. Best thing to do is pick up the phone and speak to your clients. So another thing is to just keep your teams engaged and making sure that they're more engaged with their clients and actually speaking to them, whether you do a Zoom call or
Yeah,
whatever you might want to do, the online calls, or get out and see them in person, or however you work as your business. But make sure that you're speaking to them more than you're actually typing up emails and getting lost into the system. And again, I'm sure if you eventually get your tech system working effectively, it will tell you the times that people spend on the CRMs and other platforms so they can spend a little bit more time doing what they need to do, which is the
yeah,
prospecting side of it and everything else that they need to do to get in front of a client.
yeah, absolutely, Jason. And as always, we're over our time, right? So what I'm going to suggest, Jason, I think we can go much deeper into this
Yeah.
conversation. So I'm going to suggest that from some of the topics we discussed today, we'll pick one for
Yeah.
next week and go deeper into it. And we'll have a discussion in the background, and then we'll put it up in the event for next week so people can know and to tune in. And with that, Jason, as we always talk about, one closing point or 1.5 closing points, what's the one takeaway you should give for the people listening?
I think for leaders for the future
Yeah.
is uh, understand your team.
Mm.
And I'm
Yeah.
not going to say much more than that.
Perfect. And I'm going to just add the opposite end of that, understand process, Jason, because I believe it's a huge area that sales leaders can improve upon because it's the most unprocessed processes in business today.
Yeah.
So on that note, thanks everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next week for another session on the soft and system side to sales.